In this video, we'll be talking about how luxury went from this, on this, to this, on this, number of occasions. How and why did it happen? Stick around to find out. If you're new, welcome. If you love couture style and analysis, aka CSA, then like, comment, sub, and ring that doorbell to get notifications of a weekly CSA, PSA, hot off the press. I've been reading Deluxe How Luxury Lost Its Luster by Dana Thomas, and I learned so much about the evolution of couture houses to the big fashion houses of today. So won't you join me on learning how luxury lost its luster? Small mom and pop. Dior, Chanel, Hermes, Gucci, Prada, Celine, Louis Vuitton, Balenciaga, Yves Saint Laurent, Givenchy, and etc. were once brands run by people whose names are the same people that I just read, and they were run as small boutiques, but they have now become global corporations run by rich businessmen. And yes, I'm looking at you, Bernard Arnault. You don't see me, but I'm actually pointing my finger at him. He's on the screen. And Bernard Arnault is the CEO of LVMH. Bernard Arnault is the man who's the most notable person to homogenize all of these mom and pop brands into a big, giant luxury conglomerate group. LVMH now owns LV, Celine, Gucci, Dior, and etc. so on. There's over 40 brands in that group. These rich businessmen are really good because Dior, Chanel, Hermes, Gucci, and Prada, and LV all make in excess of $1 billion in revenue each year, so they are literally rolling in the dough. So it is crazy to think you went from a boutique of one or two people to a multi-billion-dollar global brand, and you can't democratize fashion to the world when you only have a small shop in Paris, but you can if you are a global corporation. LV, Cartier, and Hermes were created in the 18th and 19th century for the European monarchy, and they were wares that were created by the artisans themselves. And then the shift to selling to the riche started when the monarchies fell. The Vanderbilts, Astors, and the Whitneys picked it up, and it was so hard to get these items by these artisans that only very small quantities were created, and you would be lucky to be able to get your hands on one compared to today. That then started a shift from the higher class to a slightly lower class, because if royalty is at the top and these luxury brands were creating stuff for the royals and the monarchs, then the industrial rich fortune was then starting to pick it up then, which in these days they are the equivalent of aristocrats and nobles on a level below the kings and queens. Later on, of course, we then shifted to becoming global luxury brands, which sold to the mass. But if you couldn't have what the king had, which was one of a kind, then more likely what you would have is what another aristocrat had, if not more rare, is what the luxury brands were creating. The Louis Vuitton son-in-law, Racamier, was then asked to help revitalize the business. He identified franchises siphoning lots of profit. And at the time, many companies were franchising to other locations and other countries so that they could expand their brands to different markets and locations that they did not have enough funding to expand there too. And the benefit is that you would be able to invest less in opening those companies in a different branch or section of the world or locality. You wouldn't spend the money to buy the land, build a boutique, or rent it out. It would already be there because it was franchised out to another person who was selling your product. But the big con is that the franchisor would take a large cut of your profit. So let's say Dior was selling to a country in Europe and they had their main branch in France. Well, they would franchise out to that country in Europe, and then they would not have to buy the land, build the boutique, or rent it out. It would all be done by a third party, which would then sell their products, and Dior would take a cut of the profits of when they made the sale. But the problem is, Racamier found is that when they looked into the books, he found out that these franchises were taking a huge cut and they were bleeding money. So he reined it all in and bought all the franchises back, and so they helped take LV from a smaller amount of profit to a much higher amount. So it helped LV take 40% profit in sales when others only took 15 to 25% of profit at the time, because other brands were franchising. LV was starting to do vertical integration and rein back the franchises to get the maximum amount of money. Racamier also listed the company publicly in the Paris Bourse and New York Stock Exchange, which actually helped promote the growth of sales by 15% and 30%, which is insane. And globalization was then the future of luxury. But even though these were giant pros of expanding the company by 15-fold and 13-fold in profit, the biggest con was that it made it so much easier for the company to get taken over by global executives, which is what happened. Racamier integrated a merger between Louis Vuitton and Moet Hennessy, which then created the group LVMH, as it is called now, which Bernard Arnault is now the CEO of. Buying a piece of the dream. To make luxury more accessible to the public, you can buy perfume and cosmetics from the brand, which is just a small piece of the luxury. A small piece of the luxury made it cheaper than the starting point of many other items such as handbags or ready-to-wear, which started at the price point of thousands of dollars. And for example, the YSL Black Opium perfume prices on YSL's website is only about 100-ish, which, as you can see, makes it a much more affordable price point than buying a bag, which is like thousands of dollars, or Yves Saint Laurent ready-to-wear, which costs at least $2,000, if not $3,000, as you can see. Rise of the middle class. In the 1980s, female empowerment led to a higher demand for status. Female executives were empowered to create a higher social status for them now that they were able to get more promotions and gain more money, and this also created a demand for luxury. The logos of brands were very important at this time because women were increasingly starting to search for more status and show off that they made more money. And so the luxury brands started to capitalize on their logos, which blew up in terms of status and also literally. In terms of Chanel, Chanel's creative director, Karl Lagerfeld, created a big giant logo in the bags that are commonly seen in the 80s, and he enlarged the CC turn lock. This, I believe, was when the CC turn lock was invented as well, from the recreation of the reissue into something a little bit more flashy. At this time, this logo fetishization was also coming about. But honestly, if I'm being honest here, all I can remember from the hideous 80s are just those shoulder pads, at least in the US. Scroll here to all the hideous pictures from the 80s and the shoulder pads. In addition, people were also getting married later, which also meant that they would be saving more money to buy these luxury goods, which at least they're saving more money before they had the kids, which we all know kids will pick up a lot of money. People with more disposable income as well were becoming people that the luxury groups were targeting as well, because they were a big income source now, so the middle class was becoming a much more delicious looking piece of fruit for them to bite into. And this is when businessmen bought out heirs for the brand and then revamped them to become a little bit more hipper and chicer. So Dior was originally named Christian Dior, but in order to modernize it, they dropped Christian from it and it just became Dior, which is a lot easier to say and it sounds a lot cooler than Christian Dior, just Dior. Burberry actually had a history of an S at the end, but it dropped the S and it just became Burberry instead of Burberry's. Target audience. The primary customers of the luxury groups are still the upper income people, much like the old riche clientele from when the founders were not dead as a doorknob. Better knock on that wood if they're coughing. Though their new democratization has been marketed to less traditional income group, the upper and middle class. The typical ages of their target group has been 35 to 50 everywhere, but generally starting at around 25 in Asia. And Asia has actually become one of their biggest groups to target. Personally, from my opinion, I've been seeing a lot of Asian women who are actually really into luxury, especially in Asia. Like, I can already list Singapore, Japan, and China are some of the biggest contenders, but even from what I've seen here in the US, a lot of Vietnamese women are always super into luxury. This also brings about issues because the rich can afford luxury even during economic downturns, and they have the extra cash, but the middle classes can't afford any of this. I highly recommend picking up How Luxury Lost Its Luster because Dana Thomas is a reporter who went undercover and discovered many things not so glamorous about the snobiety of luxury. You won't regret it, I promise, if you read this book. It was very eye-opening. Now, I have a question for you. What do you think about fashion houses going mainstream with luxury? Leave me your thoughts in the comments down below. Bye!